Good morning. It is so nice to see you all. It's wonderful. It's my pleasure to welcome you to National Harbor and to the 2023 annual conference. Last year, for those of you who were here, you remember this. And for those of you who were not here but wanted to be here, you probably remember it as well. Last year, we held this event as both live and streaming for some sessions. And this year, we're doing live and streaming again, but look at the size of this group again. Yay. Last year, because up until about mid-December, we looked great. We were, in the pandemic world, we were thriving. We had like 550 registrants. And then Omicron hit and emerged with a vengeance. It caused lots of changes in travel and lots of changes in programming. But we made it through. I know I speak for all of us when I say it's great to have a sense of normalcy back again. Let's give ourselves a hand for that. This week, I challenge each and every one of you to take advantage of all the opportunities the Alliance Conference offers to you to connect with some of the most knowledgeable and experienced healthcare CPD professionals. Connect with your peers in the exhibit hall and stop by the Alliance Connection Zone to learn more about the Alliance, membership, year-round learning opportunities, and, need I say it, volunteer opportunities as well. I cannot express how excited I am for the next few days. Don't forget to join us this evening at the Alliance Americana celebration at 5:30 in the Riverview Ballroom. We have a special surprise in store for everyone tonight. Now, I'd like to welcome Ann Lichty to the stage to introduce this morning's keynote speaker. Ann?
Thank you, Jan. Thank you all for being here with the Alliance community this week. This morning, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our opening keynote. This session will be eye-opening as Dr. Russell Leday discusses DEI Progress and the role we all play in ensuring diverse perspectives are represented in our field. I met Dr. Leday several years ago, and for those of you who know me, tennis is a big part of my life. And I met him several years ago on some public tennis courts in Jersey City. I was finishing up a lesson with my coach, and he was coaching one of his young daughters. We got to talking, and he told me he was attending NYU and working on a PhD in molecular oncology and tumor immunology. So I had to tell him all about accredited education and the exciting world of outcomes measurement, because I am a champion of outcomes measurement. Well, fast forward really shortly, we started working together on some outcomes reporting, and then a couple of years in, he called me and said, "Sis, I got some good news, and I got some bad news. Well, the good news is I was accepted to medical school. The bad news is I'm probably gonna have a limited time to be working with you on these outcomes reports." And I said, "All right, congrats. You're destined to do bigger things. We're gonna stay in touch." And so we have. And as I knew back then when I met him, Dr. Leday was destined to do much bigger things. And so it's my honor and privilege to introduce him today. Dr. Russell J. Leday is a native of Lake Charles, Louisiana, a U.S. Navy veteran. During his time at Tulane School of Medicine, he also received his MBA in a dual program. Dr. Leday co-founded the 15 White Coats, an organization that helps to propel underrepresented minority students to the next level of education by providing inspiration and economic support. Dr. Leday has been featured on CNN, MSNBC, People Magazine, The Steve Harvey Show, NPR, Washington Post, Good Morning America, Kelly Clarkson, the list goes on and on. Following his triple board residency program at IU, he plans to focus on mental health accessibility for marginalized communities. He is a husband of 14 years to Mallory Elise, and the father of 2 little girls, Malia Ann and Melina Aubrey, who, let me just predict it now, they're gonna be the next 2 WTA tennis champions in the not-too-distant future. So please put your hands together and give a warm Alliance welcome to Dr. Russell Aday, and also this session's moderator and the 2023 Alliance Conference Planning Committee Chair, Brian Thompson. Welcome them to the stage, y'all.
Good morning. Come on, we family. Good morning. Thank you. Appreciate it. So I always start off every last talk by letting you all know that I'm probably gonna cry. I'm probably gonna shout. I'm also gonna be real with you. I'm not a normal speaker. I'm not up here to keep it cute, keep it fun, keep it light, because the lives of my children and my aunts and uncles, grandmothers and grandfathers is in the balance. Shanice Wallace is dead because healthcare failed her. I could keep going with the names, but we all got blood on our hands. And I say we because I think of healthcare as a family. I also think of healthcare as a body. And there are different components of the body that do different things. Like the eyes don't do what the feet do. The hands don't do what the heart does. The lungs don't do what the gut does. They all have different roles. CME has an incredibly large role in whether or not healthcare is successful. And seeing as how we live in one of the greatest countries, if not the greatest country in the world, and I can say that as a 10-year United States Navy veteran, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. We got some work to do because we're behind the ball, and what's crazy is we're behind the ball, but we have all the resources. We don't lack resources. What we lack is self-initiative. And today we'll talk about self-initiative around DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because if you think about our country, and you think about who walks into a hospital or who walks into a clinic, they don't all look like the people who come in this room. As a matter of fact, a vast majority who end up getting the bad end of a lot of these statistics we have in healthcare don't look like most of the people in this room. It doesn't make anyone in this room a bad person. It just means we got some work to do. So I just want to go ahead up front and get it out the way. You might as well get comfortable, get your pen out. You know, don't think I'm coming at your head or none of that. I want you to know I love you. I want the best for you. Because we all got a role to play as a team, as a family, to make sure that the next time a patient sees me or any of my colleagues, that the outcomes are better than they are right now. Because right now they're abysmal, and there's no excuse. Okay?
Welcome.
Thank you.
How's it going?
It's going great, man.
So, let's just jump right in, right?
Yeah.
So, how do we start the conversation? What do we want to talk about?
Yeah, let me backdrop and say something. Brian and I have built a relationship. I spent a lot of time with Brian learning who he is as a person. That was intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I told Brian the first time we met, I said, listen, bro, I need to know who you are as a person. Not as a white person, not as an Arizonian, not as somebody from the United States of America. I need to know who you are as a person. What makes you tick? What do you like to do with your kids? What do you and your wife like to do in your all's free time? Where do you live? What's your relationship with your father like? What's the relationship with your mother like? Because we need to find some common ground. It's like you can't just come walk up to me and say, yo, what are your thoughts on black braids? You can't do that, bruh. We haven't built a relationship. We have to build a relationship. And that relationship has to be built on you seeing me as a human. A lot of people in this room need to go and see When They See Us. It's on Netflix, and I'm willing to bet at least 80% of this room has access to Netflix, because Netflix marketing is doing a great job. I'm not getting paid by them, so I'm just saying that because I like to look at marketing. But Ava DuVernay who is a queen and a brilliant, brilliant filmmaker in her own right, wrote and created a story about the Central Park Five and how wrong they were and how they're still dealing with the atrocities. But she named it When They See Us. And when I was talking to Brian, I said, Brian, you know, man, our country doesn't teach us to see people from minority communities as people. They're subjects. They're people we study, right? They're participants. They're other. They're my black friend. They're my Hispanic friend. There's a qualifier to their existence. So what does that mean? It means that when you see them, you don't see them as a human. You see them as an asset, or in some cases as a detriment. Meanwhile, our cousin who's struggling in every which way possible, we can still see them as a human because they look like us. How do we get past that? I gotta see Brandy as that's my sister. But she gotta see me as her brother. When I treat a patient, I'm like, oh, that's my nephew, that's my niece. So I take the extra second to read that lab. But I also take the extra second and say, where you from? How'd you get here? How are you in Indiana, but you only speak Fulani? We gotta get to know one another, y'all. Think about it. Maya Angelou talked about how people will forget a lot of things that you've done and all these other things, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. I always come in with the meter of how am I gonna make my patient feel? Am I gonna make them feel seen? Am I gonna make them feel heard? Or are they gonna almost wanna give me a hug before I leave out of the room? But that's the same thing with CME. Do your residents feel seen or heard? Do your attendings feel seen or heard? Is the person who coming in for grand rounds falling flat on their face? Are you only hiring your homeboy or your homegirl to come and give the grand rounds? Is the consultant somebody who genuinely doesn't know what they're doing, but you know them? Meanwhile, they got some black woman who's been studying DEI for 150 years, along with the rest of her family, and you don't even give them an email. Not even a courtesy like, can we at least see what your prices look like? But it starts with getting to know each other. So I know a lot about Brian.
Yeah, and our conversations have gone many different directions. Started off with, how do I have the conversation, the difficult conversation, to let's talk about video games.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you and I have talked about extensively is through the lens.
Yeah.
How do we see each other? And through our conversations, we talked about, well, not the same backgrounds, but close.
Yeah.
Similar backgrounds in terms of family, dynamics, into where we're at. And I think some of the stuff that we want to start with is seeing it through the lens. You and I talked about this. My upbringing from Tucson, never go past 22nd at night, right? Then I bring that here, and I feel like I'm a good person. I see people. You've gotten to interact with that. And then I'll go to a small story about getting my license that we've talked about. And I was talking to my parents about this, is that my license expired. I had to go to the DMV with 4 different identifications and mailing addresses. Well, I'm not primarily listed on any of our pieces of mail. And so I had to go through a series of documentations to get there. Now I feel like I'm privileged. I'm able to have my own bills. I have my passport on there. And then when I was explaining this to my parents, because we were talking about voter registration, you have to have an ID. I was like, the troubles that I went through to get an ID, imagine if you didn't have a bill. Imagine if you didn't have a home, how you go through that. So you and I talked a lot about this, about seeing through the lens of there. You've talked about going into the room, the examination room, and someone being like, well, we'll wait for the doctor to get here. So talk a little bit through your lens.
Yeah. So first things first, I'll tell you about that experience that I had. I was going to see a patient, my own patient, and the nurse is in there doing something. And this will sound wild, and this is probably my first time saying this on camera, but I usually say like a quick 5 to 10 second prayer before I walk into any patient's room. It's just kind of my own thing. Like, Lord, give me the right things to say, give me the right things to do, help my mind to be straight, so I'm really helping this patient to be better. And I walk into the room, I always do this. I'm like, hey, how's everyone doing? I try to keep the liveliest spirit possible because I think it can translate to patients feeling better about their diagnosis and how things are going. And the nurse was like, oh, can you wait? I was like, what? What you mean, can I wait? I'm confused. He's like, yeah, you can come and change out the gloves or clean the room or whatever after this patient is seen. I'm waiting on the doctor. I'm waiting on the doctor. And the Lord gave me the right thing to say, so you ain't got nothing to worry about. I didn't do nothing crazy. And I was like, well, I'm gonna wait on the doctor too. Hell, we could both wait on the doctor. Let's go ahead and sit this one out. And she turned the light on and she saw my badge. And she gathered herself. And I think she was expecting me to bite her head off. And I said, it's okay. I said, it's okay. You made a mistake. It was a racist mistake. But you genuinely made a mistake. And you gotta learn from it. Because I'm gonna need you. I cannot come in this room and put a peripheral IV in this patient. Not because I'm not capable, because I don't have time. And that's not my role on this team to come here and put this PIV in. But I also don't need you to walk out of this room with your head down. I need you to walk out of this room recognizing that you can make a racist mistake. But now I'm gonna need you to own that mistake and grow from it. I've been married for 18 years. And the greatest tool I've ever learned is grow from your mistakes. You're bound to make a mistake. Every last one of us is bound to make a mistake. And some mistakes are genuinely racist mistakes. You've been ingrained in you to think of certain people certain ways. Unfortunately, when you see somebody with melanin in their skin, the first thing you think is they're black or they're brown. That's the first thing you use to identify the person. Not that they're someone's father or someone's husband, or they're someone's wife, or they're someone's cousin, or they're someone's prayer warrior. You don't see it that way. And that's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. But I can't have that nurse with her head down, because then that patient's health care is in the balance. And like I just told you, all of us have a role to play in successful health care. So I told her, it's okay, we could talk about it later. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal right now. Because the most important thing right now is this patient getting well. We all got a job to play. We all got a job to do. And so he asked me what lens I look through. You know, I got a pretty wide lens. I got a nifty 50 lens for all the photographers in the room. I got a wide lens. I've been digging in dumpsters for my dinner. I've stolen water from the next door neighbor's water hose so we could take baths. I've used detergent as a dishwashing liquid, a detergent for our clothes, and to clean myself in the tub. I've served in the United States Navy for 10 years, not only including intelligence, but also here on Capitol Hill. Been on White House grounds for very long periods of time. Buried over 2,000 people in Arlington National Cemetery. I've deployed across this world. I've gone to get 2 degrees in chemistry and biology, a master's in biochemistry, a PhD in molecular oncology, an MD and an MBA from Tulane, and I'm triple boarding right now in pediatrics, adult psychiatry, and child and adolescent psychiatry. What's my lens? We a team. We a team. And players on the team mess up sometimes. But if the team gonna win, that teammate gonna have to fix their issues. What am I talking about? I spent over $1,200 a couple days ago. I bought 50 books from a black-owned bookstore called Black World Scholars Bookstore in Indianapolis, Indiana. I bought a book called Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. They're all over this room. If you're close to one, take it home with you. If you weren't lucky enough to get one, just go buy it. We all got enough money to buy it in this room. If you're in this room, you got enough money to buy it. No one's going to teach you what's in that book. The atrocities that leave black people and brown people with hesitance when it comes down to healthcare. That's where it comes from. You think it's because they don't want to know? You think it's because they don't want to get the shot, the COVID shot, or whatever? No. We had an answer for syphilis and nobody gave it to them. We were cutting babies out of black women on tables without anesthesia. Would you not be scared? None of my Jewish friends think the Holocaust was nice. They all have some trauma, some generational trauma to deal with. Why wouldn't you think minority communities have that exact same trauma? And then most of the people who walk into the room to take care of them, they don't look like them. Do you know what it looked like when I walked in the room? And the other person who I'm taking care of look like me? It's a Frankie Beverly and Mays cookout. I'm just keeping it real. Y'all don't get to see that part, but that's what it is. So my lens is wide, and my lens is forgiving, but my lens is true. I'm gonna call you out when you're wrong, but I'm not gonna call you out so much so that you can't grow from it. I told Brian, I was like, bro, you're gonna always be able to text me. You're gonna always be able to call me. You can always email me. Because I don't want this to just be me and you sitting on a stage and you not growing. That's one more white man on my team. No, for real, but for progress, not for notoriety. Brian ain't got to walk around saying, oh, I know Dr. Leday, I sat on this panel with him and whatever. Nah, it's about progress. It's about progress. The title of this talk was, are we in this for DEI notoriety, or are we in this for DEI progress? Progress don't get no press. Progress don't get any press. You think all those teachers in communities like the Ninth Ward in New Orleans, South Side of Chicago, what used to be Barry Farms down the street, Southeast DC, you think they're gonna get some press? The teachers who taught me, ain't gonna get no press. My school was closed. I'm standing on this stage. But now we need white people to do that kind of work. And you ain't gonna get no credit for it. You ain't gonna get no credit for it. So don't go looking for nothing. This ain't the award time. This is progress time. The awards will come, they'll come, but let's just focus on the work. Let's focus on making sure that CME videos aren't a whole bunch of white cartoons. Or when you think about remaking a book or a learning platform or whatever, you bring some people in the room who could be like, man, bruh, who you think watching this? I know when I do training as a resident, I'm like, where are all the brothers at? But are y'all asking that question? Because me asking that question is expected. Are you asking that question? Man, why ain't no black people in this video? Why ain't no brothers on the wall? Why ain't no sisters on the wall? Why ain't nobody from the LGBTQ community on our leadership? Why? But then we gonna say we gonna get them the most equitable care. That sounds crazy. And it's not me fussing. This is me thinking about this is like, this all my brothers and sisters in this room. And I want us to all be better. Y'all gotta learn from us. But then y'all gotta go do some work. And don't get no credit for it. That's for us. Because we brought it to the table. But then when we win, let's all be excited. Let's all big up. Let's all big up. Let's do that. That's how we gonna win. I saw Orlando. If y'all don't know him, you should know him. This is somebody who I've been admiring for a very long time. He's over at Children's Hospital of LA. I admire this dude from afar. When I saw him, I didn't shake his hand. I gave him the biggest hug I could. Later on in this talk, I'm gonna tell y'all about a story that just happened with one of my close friends, but the reason why is because I see him as family. Even my dysfunctional family, I'm gonna give a hug to. That's the lens I'm talking about. That's the lens. It came at a price, but it's a pretty good lens. And it's a lens we can all ascertain. It's just gonna take some work. That book is thick. It's not just thick physically, it's thick emotionally. Because you're gonna realize what black people have been through in this country with healthcare, and it's gonna make you angry. Don't let it allow you to be transiently angry. You should be perpetually angry to the point that you're willing to do something about it.
Just want to take a quick second. So you know Art too? I've known that guy for what, 12 years now, 15 years? So this is a small connection because I was talking with Angel. She's part of DDW and going there, which I used to work with. It's all.
Wow.
Sorry, that's a side note.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
So I have two things. You and I have had a lot of conversations. And I'll let you go kind of steer where I want to go on here. Talking about the racial mistakes in terms of, you and I have talked about, I get to ask the questions free. I get to ask the questions without any opinion on how you take my questions on here.
Yep.
But then I also want to talk about feeding the pipeline for people of color and going in healthcare and your role when you went from security guard to tracking someone down. I don't know which one's more appropriate to go in what order, but I really, because you and I have talked about how do we have the conversation, how do I have that conversation with you without you feeling like, as a white male, coming down and asking stupid questions on there. So those are the two things I want to go to next, and I'll let you kind of.
Sure. So the first one is, let's start with how we feed this pipeline. Because I really think this 15 white coats approach is going to probably revolutionize how many people from minoritized backgrounds end up in healthcare. So if you don't know who the 15 white coats are, you should. The 15 white coats came after a photo of 15 black medical students at Tulane University. Took a photo in front of a cabin at a slave plantation. I had organized it after my daughter and I had gone there. My daughter and I went there in July of 2019, and she wasn't interested in going because she wanted to play tennis. And I took her away from her tennis practice, and I voluntold her that she was coming, as dads do, and moms too. And she wasn't very interested, but after she left out of that cabin, she was a totally different person. She saw the bed that enslaved people used to sleep in. She walked on the creaky floor. You could feel the draft of air rolling through the cabin. You could see the soot from the chimney that was there. She was a totally different person. We walked the rest of the grounds, and when we got in the car to drive back, because it was about 45 minutes from New Orleans, she said, "Dad, we have come a long way." I was like, "Who?" First of all, I don't speak French, so who is we? She was like, "Black people. Black people have come a long way." She's like, "We used to couldn't, they wouldn't allow us to read. They wouldn't allow us to color. They wouldn't allow us to pretty much talk." I'm riding in the car with two black doctors. This is my 8-year-old who said this to me. She said, I'm riding in the car with 2 black doctors. That's how far we've come. And there's a song that says, we've come this far by faith. I think we didn't also come this far by a whole bunch of bloodshed. So I thought it was a good idea for us to go back there as a whole bunch of black becoming doctors and take a photo and show the world how far we've come in our white coats. And we did that. And that photo shook the world up. I remember being on Kelly Clarkson's set and her being like, this is the most poignant image I've ever seen in my life. And it truly is. If you haven't seen it, and once you see it, you'll understand. So we took all that notoriety and said we can raise money, and then instead of asking somebody else, like, oh, can you just give them a scholarship, please, to help them get in? We're just gonna do it ourselves. And then we took the photo, we printed it in poster size, 2 foot by 3 foot, 3 foot by 4 foot, and put it in schools all over the world for free. So all the money, 100% of the money we raise, we just use it to put put posters in schools, because I'm willing to bet that none of us were in school and saw a black doctor on the wall. So if you're a child and you never see a black doctor on the wall where you spend most of your time as a child, is in the school, it's 8 hours a day. It's kind of hard to imagine that one day you can be a black doctor or a brown doctor or any kind of doctor outside of when we close our eyes what we think a doctor should look like. And so to this date, we're pretty close to being able to pay for someone's medical school tuition. And hopefully we'll raise enough money to be able to do it for about 10 to 15 people in my lifetime. It cost about $250,000 for us to do it for one person. And on top of that, what we've also done is, so we all know the data around literacy in minoritized communities in the US. And it probably makes sense for us to put books in classrooms of kids. And the book should be similar to their lived experience, because they probably will have more interest in reading the book if the book speaks to something they actually are familiar with. So what authors are going to write those books? Probably authors who come from those exact same communities. But what's the likelihood that a school is going to go and buy books from those types of authors? The same likelihood of me having beachfront property in Idaho. It's probably not going to happen. So we just partnered with Cummins and the Black World School Bookstore to make book boxes. And we called it the Resilient Book Readers Club. And we're gonna put books in every last school in Indianapolis. And we're also gonna put books in every last school in New Orleans, and then LA and Atlanta and New York, and hopefully all over the country. Because if we increase literacy rates, especially in minority communities, we probably increase the likelihood of minority PAs, nurses, CME coordinators. No, we do, right? And so we're just thinking about every step of the way, what do we need to do to plug up all the holes that our society has somehow thought of as things that aren't that important. The way we fund education in our country and the way we parcel out the money to different communities is by far one of the dumbest things I've ever seen ever happen. It's just stupid. It's dumb. But then we keep building prisons. So where the hell we get money from to build prisons, but we don't have the money to reform education? I'm gonna get off that soapbox. The point is that that's what the 15 White Coats is doing. We're providing economic support. We pay for people's MCAT. We pay for them to prepare for the MCAT. We also give out mental health resources, like we give out at least 20 Calm app subscriptions every year, especially during the holiday season, to deal with seasonal depression. Because a lot of these medical students and residents and even attendings cannot go home during the holiday season, because people get sick on Christmas and New Year's too, surprisingly. You know, it's when their glucose goes up, their blood pressure goes up. So somebody's got to be in the hospital. So we're trying to think about the whole way to help healthcare be better. If we can't address mental health in the people who are taking care of people, then we probably won't have those people to take care of people for very long. And mental health is not giving me another training to do, because I'm tired as hell already. And then the other question you were asking me about, which is,
How do we start the conversation?
yeah, how do we start the conversation?
Going both ways.
Yeah. So this is my way of thinking about it. Maybe you'll think about it differently. There's two sides to this coin. There's you being brave enough and smart enough to go do your own homework. Don't come ask me for the answers to something that you can find on your own. Because I am tired. I'm fighting for the same things that my ancestors fought for, just with a suit on. But then also, when you get to that point to where you're stuck, because if you got kids, you know eventually they get stuck. Right? They get stuck on a math problem, or they get stuck while they're reading something, and they need some help. I don't necessarily need to be gentle with you, but I gotta give you the benefit of the doubt that it's coming from a good place. And so I'm gonna give you straightforward answers, and I'll go ahead and preface it by saying some of it will come with recoil. Asking black women about their hair is gonna come with recoil. Even if you didn't watch Good Hair and you didn't read all the books, black women tired talking about their hair to you. Black women also get paid way less than everybody else. So they're frustrated by the financial aspect too. So take those nuances into account when you come asking them a question. Make sure it's while you giving them an offer to go with you and your girlfriends to go to a spa. Because y'all do that, right? Or you invite them over for dinner and you watch Cajun Ninja instead of Martha Stewart, because Martha Stewart can't cook that well. No, I'm for real. You gotta be able to ask me a question. I have to be willing to give you an answer, and sometimes it's gonna come with a bite, but just know it's coming from a good place. My anger is coming from the standpoint of, why you not growing how I know you can? A lot of black people are frustrated when they're answering questions to their white colleagues because they know what you're capable of doing. But you're not willing to do it because you're waiting on me to give you the answer. Instead of going do your own homework and then coming to me with real questions, not the basic questions that we've been asking for forever. When your black colleague come in with a new hairstyle, just tell them it looks nice and keep it moving. Don't ask them how the hell they morphed a sew-in into a comb-out. It's gonna take you too long to learn that. They ain't got enough YouTubes to teach you that. But you can remember when their kid's birthday is and give them a $5 Amazon gift card. Have a deeper relationship with people who don't look like you. Invite people to your cookout who don't look like you. Learn from people who don't look like you. And then change, man. That's all black people is asking. That's all minority people. That's all these communities is asking y'all to do is change, man. Because the reality of it is, in most environments, white people in power. Y'all not gonna relinquish that power no time soon. So just change, man. Read the damn book, stay right there. Watch 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones. Go watch When They See Us. Go learn who Mandiba really was. Go figure out the miseducation of the Negro. Go read Carter G. Woodson. The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. It's an amazing book to read. All we asking y'all to do is to do the work, man. Because you know what? Here's the crazy part. The work that we asking y'all to do is our lived experience. It's okay. The work we asking y'all to do is our lived experience. We've been in the school of the world. I was talking to Brandy Kokski yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that racism is not singularly in the United States of America. How is that? How is that? You can go all over the world. And it just so happen that if your skin is a little bit darker, things just don't work out for you very well, in general. But to my boy B's point, at the end of the day, the answer to your question is, you gotta do some homework, come to me with real questions and not the layups. The Steph Curry shots from half court, that's the ones I want. And then when we have a long discussion about it, bro, grow from that point. And then also go talk to your colleagues about that. Don't just talk to me about it, because black folks having these conversations in barbershops every dang on day. We having these conversations because we have no other choice. This is our lived experience. It don't come and go. It's here every day. This is just something y'all interested in. You see what I'm saying? And then understand that sometimes it's gonna come with a little recoil, because we're tired. We're tired of answering the exact same question over and over and over. And when you're tired, you're gonna express some frustration. All of us do that. Nobody in this room gets frustrated and then just say, oh, you know, Brian, here's the best way to go about answering this question. Because we're tired. We're tired. And we're not compensated that well. I'm gonna say this real quick. I have two little black girls, Malia Ann and Aubrey, and Melina Aubrey. You know what I know? No matter how hard I prepare them, they never gonna get paid what they worth. Their entire lifetime. I gotta prepare them for that. You imagine what that look like, what that preparation look like? I'm the father. My wife is the mother. How do we prepare two young black girls right now to know your economics ain't gonna be economic? The math ain't mathing. Black women know that. Black men know that. Women know that. Women in general know that. There's no woman who doesn't know that. They know their male colleague gets paid more than them, even though he don't do as much. No, I'm just keeping it real. I mean, we want to have we family, so we can have a real conversation. Or I can sit here and lie to y'all, it's gonna be all right, Jim. It's just not, man. We got work to do, y'all. So, for everybody who's from a minority group in here, just know that I know you're tired. I know you're exhausted. But our ancestors were too. And they ain't quit. They didn't 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 quit It's on our shoulders now. Growth and progress is on us. But it's also on y'all. Because unlike some of y'all ancestors, y'all actually willing to sit here and listen to me tell y'all something. Could you imagine if this room was filled with slave owners? Man, they would have walked out. I'm not sure they would have came in. Would have seen the keynote? Nope, not coming. Y'all already done took a lot of steps in the right direction. But notice I said steps. Now it's time for you to start running. Because we've been walking for too long.
So in our conversations of getting to a little bit of a practical, you and I had some interesting conversations about CME training and the difference in terms of, we're so used to having Caucasian models on everything. You and I were talking about, put in practical terms, my wife did a skin of color curriculum. You were talking about outdated technology in terms of pulsometers. And
pulse oximeters.
So you are currently in residency, going through your training. So just talk a little bit about that, because as we develop education, how do we get our heads around, wow, I would have to approach you as a physician differently than someone of Caucasian background or something like that. Because I think that's just very enlightening, and I didn't realize this, and you brought it even to more light through our conversations up here.
Yeah, we can look at renal function parameters. We could look at pulse oximeters. We could look at a lot of the stuff that one of the artists, I think his name is Shadibe. I can't pronounce his name correctly, but I know he's a medical artist. He talks about the dermatologic differences. Very simple things like psoriasis and eczema. And what does it look like in people of color as opposed to white people? Pulse oximetry. People with melanin in their skin, it doesn't pick up as well. Pain. We really want to have a conversation around pain? There's this long thought perception that, oh, black people experience pain differently. They have a higher tolerance for pain. I'm pretty sure we can all imagine in this room where that comes from. When you're willing to hang someone or put a bear trap on their feet and still make them pick cotton. How do we change that? Well, you gotta have clinicians in the room who think about that. The main people thinking about that are the people who come from those backgrounds. There aren't that many of us to begin with. I'm willing to bet there's less than 50 black male child psychiatrists in this country. And I'm one of them in training right now. It means the likelihood of a black boy seeing a black child psychiatrist is pretty low. So in order for us to change it from a CME level, you gotta have some people in the room who actually care about those communities. They spend time in those communities. I was talking to Brian a little bit about it, but now we're much further along. I came here a few days early to take some meetings with some people at ABC and CBS and a couple other places because I'm making a film right now. I've made a couple films. But this film, I think, will be the most powerful film I've ever created. I had this idea. What if we allow minority parents to talk about how they view healthcare on film? Like, what's their best experience? What's their worst experience? Without interruption. Because most of the time when minorities are trying to provide their history of present illness, they get interrupted and they lose their thought. And then we take that out the room to present that patient and come up with diagnoses and what we're gonna order. Are we gonna order a chest x-ray? Are we just gonna sit and watch them? Are we gonna admit them or not? Well, it's kind of hard to do that when you didn't even listen to the whole story. So what if we allow them to be uninterrupted? And then we just let CME educators, physicians, nurses, PAs, dentists, optometrists, just listen. Shut up and listen. Let them spill their piece. What was their experience like for their child? Obviously, I'm focused on pediatrics because I'm a pediatrician. But I also do it in adults at some point too. But to your question, who's going to consider their experience? Who's going to look at, I mean, we have all the data present for like how the pulse oximeter it doesn't work as well for minorities. We just recently changed parameters for renal function, right? Dermatologic presentations are very different. We know all these things. But then how does that translate to better healthcare? How does that translate to more culturally sensitive CME? Well, since you all are the creators of it, I mean, y'all gotta do it. It's on y'all shoulders. But bring in, all y'all have access, y'all can work with community organizations, right? Bring in parents. Let them tell you about their clinical experience. The film will tell you about their clinical experience, but that'll only be like 10 to 15 parents. And then let that inform how you form CME. Because then you'll have that as your backbone. Like you'll have that as your lens. Like I remember this mom telling me about, I had been telling them that my son been constipated for 6 months. They thought I was crazy. Come to find out, he got Crohn's disease. Or the mom who comes in saying, my period stopped. The person who comes in and says, my period stopped. And we go 6 months without getting a pregnancy test. Because we think they're crazy. Where are you getting your information from for how you create CME? If it's sort of like this circular feedback system where the same people who are producing the CME are not the people who are experiencing the atrocities, well, don't you think you're missing something? I would. That feedback loop is jacked. And like I said earlier, this is not about, oh, this is gonna make me feel bad. Nah, man. This is what progress looks like, having hard conversations. I'm sure you all are excellent at what you do. And a few retools here and there, we could be the reason why Black maternal mortality goes down. Or asthma isn't a huge environmental racism thing in our country. Because right now it is. Or sickle cell pain is managed better. Because when they say they're in pain, they're actually in pain. You don't have good blood flow, you're probably in pain. I'm just saying. But you know what all that starts with? I truly believe that all of that starts with seeing all of these subjects as people. Instead of something I can just study. Like I just need to study it. And when you're in a grocery store, that Black grandmother who's in there shopping, say hello. You're probably gonna surprise her. Have lunch with a colleague that you don't normally. Get to know people who don't come from where you come from. You got to. My kids are counting on you to do that. We need, forget better CME educators. Man, we need better people. It's going to translate to you being a better CME educator. I promise you that. And I'm just telling you that part of the component of you being a better person is you learning something about the experience of minority people. Stop thinking we these crazy people who just sitting off on the side doing our own thing and start realizing that we people, man. We are people. We have amazing talents. We're incredibly successful, but we somebody's grandmother. We somebody's mother, somebody's dad, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin. And we all got a role to play in whether or not healthcare is successful. Every resident relies on you all. Every resident. There's no resident in an ACGME accredited institution that's not relying on the people in this room. And specifically for the component of DEI, y'all gotta do better. Because the healthcare outcomes is dependent on it. So the conversation don't have to be uncomfortable. It just gotta be truthful. And you don't need to be scared to ask me a question. And you don't need to take it personal when I bite your head off because the question you asked was too simple. It's about growth. You gotta know I'm coming from a place of growth. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna shut up. This is the story I was talking about. I had a friend, very close friend of mine. His wife is in the process of getting ready to have a baby, and she asked me, and they're both white. She's like, RJ, I just got a question. Why are you so invested in me? Like, why? I got like a lot of followers on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, whatever. She's like, why would you like repost my stuff and all this other stuff? And I said, well, you carrying my niece and nephew. This is your husband, I see him as my brother. And if you win, and the baby wins, and he wins, we all win. But the question, what you're really asking me is, why do you have a level of humanity that I don't naturally have? So how can you like, I'm just some like middle of the road, like white woman, I don't really have no connection to you at all. I was like, black people are indoctrinated to have consideration for others. From the moment they are born, even at the peak of their rage, oftentimes will bridle themselves. Our sense of humanity comes from recognizing that the consequences for us acting out on our rage are much greater. You don't have to see me as a person. I have to see you as a person. And her mind was blown, of course. I was like, see me as a family member. Check on my kids every once in a while. Bring me a donut. I probably don't need it, but bring me a donut. See how my birthday was. Take me to dinner. Do all the things that you do with anyone else. And be comfortable if I take you to a Jamaican restaurant. Because the food is good. And we season our food. Just keeping it real.
I think how much more time do we have? How much more time? Okay. So, okay.
It's 9:30 right now.
All right, as we come down on here, wrapping up on here, this has been great, and I've enjoyed our times that we've had the conversations. You've gotten to allow me to ask questions and have some conversations. As much as I would like to wrap up on talk about our video games and going from there, in your heart of hearts, I mean, are we making progress? I know you and I have talked about notoriety versus actually doing the work, and the difference in terms of, hey, we can put a badge out there that says we have a D&I committee.
Right.
We're committed to it, but I know we can't quantify it, but on our departing words here, what are some metrics that we can use to gauge our successfulness? As you've mentioned, it starts with us and the CME on here.
I think the biggest metric is how your minoritized colleagues feel at work. They're not lying to you. They're not complaining just to complain. They're not. That's not what this is. They just see how Jim and Tom get along and what they got going on and the fact that they can't have that. That's the biggest metric. When you think about like these like temperature checks around culture within a work environment, but also feedback from residents. Look at the last 12 months. Take all of your grand rounds invitees and put them on a sheet. If they all look the same, you really can't distinguish who's who. Or everybody pretty much talking about the same thing year in and year out. You probably got some work to do in that area. If you go watch the trainings that you create, if everybody in there look like you, you're wrong. You're wrong. It don't make you a terrible person. It just mean you got some reading to do. If every time you have lunch, y'all only order from majority-owned restaurants, you're wrong. Order from a Jamaican spot. Order from a Cajun spot. Order from a Somalian spot. A Nigerian spot. A El Salvadorian spot. A Honduran spot. A Mexican spot. Not a white-owned Mexican spot. An actual Mexican spot. You're wrong. If you're not constantly having these conversations in your work environment, and you more and more comfortable with conversations that you were once uncomfortable with, you're wrong. As I told you all probably, I don't know, this is my 5th or 6th time saying this. CME is going to change when you change individually. I wrote a tweet the other day. I didn't expect it to get as much attention as it did, but it did. I was just inspired. I was listening to Be Free. It's a song by J. Cole. And I tweeted, you can't be all about DEI at work and then go home and have David Duke meetings. It doesn't work that way. It's personal first. And let me preface it by saying that when you grow in this area, some of your family members are not going to vibe with you very well because they stuck. They're stuck trying to hold on to power that they never had. And so progress is happening because this is happening. You all have a huge role in CME. We're having this conversation. So you are inherently going to grow. So CME is inherently going to be different, I'm assuming. But I think it's a pretty safe assumption. That's progress. Progress is slow. Progress is slow and progress is rocky. I'm not going to tell y'all what Seinfeld said in the Wale album. He was talking about how marriage is a roller coaster. I think of DEI as a roller coaster. You can't be like ready for it because it's new. It's something new. You're going to grow from it. Well, this is new. You're going to grow from it. You ain't got no other choice but to grow from it. If you got Harriet Washington's brilliant book, Medical Apartheid, in your hand, you don't have any excuses. If you were lucky enough to get one of the 50 copies, you don't have any excuses. Everybody in this room can afford to buy that book. I figured I'd jump-start it by giving out 50. So those 50 people don't have an excuse. But honestly, nobody in this room has an excuse. We probably all have access to Hulu, so we can watch the 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah-Jones. We can go and read about The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Same kind of different as me. And the next time we have this kind of conversation, it will be deeper. It'll be more meaningful. And you'll be able to say you could come to the cookout. Probably not. It's a hope. All right? I don't want y'all to be shy when it comes down to questions. As I said, I'm not biting nobody's head off. Ask real questions. I'm going to give you real answers. Okay? I'm going to start with some questions so we get out of here.
Yeah, so you and I kind of talked about this when it was, you were excited for me to come and ask you these questions on here, but, from my standpoint, white male on here, people are going to say this is kind of contrived and why is he doing this? And we've talked about that, but I think what we want to come across is to have those conversations in here. And I don't know where I'm kind of going with this, but I just want to get it out there. It's like, I struggle sometimes talking with you and asking some of those questions on here, and this isn't really supposed to be contrived.
Yeah.
Like, push me out to talk to you and to talk to everybody here, and it's just like, trying to bring this circle back on here is just to have these uncomfortable conversations. And I think you told me a couple times, is like, just say it.
Yeah, just say it, bro. Just say it.
Because I could make a fool of myself. I probably can, I can't, I don't know. People know me, I'm awkward. But I think that's what we want to get across is that I like your position on here. You don't ask the easy questions. Like, about your hair, about this, about that. But like, I want to make sure it's communicated that, and make progress, I have to be able to ask you the uncomfortable questions and the stupid questions, because I see it through my lens as a white male. And, is it okay to call you African American? Black? Like, so, again, I don't know where I'm kind of going with this, but I think your feeling is that how to have that, I just want to ask you questions, and go from there, because I think that's what we have to do in our CME world. And I think you brought it back with even talking about the technology that's outdated. That's just mind-blowing that we live in 2023 and you're going to get a different reading on here I actually want to go back and ask the question about ultrasound machines to our committee and say, is there a difference of scanning on there? So I'll just end it on there, or I'll come back and just say, you know, in your experience, like, to reiterate, we have to have these conversations, and to be uncomfortable for me to come to you.
Right. We have to have the conversations. You also got to do the work. And just know, I can at least speak for myself and a lot of people in my tribe, including my trusted agent, Angel Russell, that I'm not going to bite your head off. I'm never going to bite your head off. The greatest thing I've ever done was serve this country, like, hands down. It taught me how to work with people who come from every background you could possibly imagine. But it's also taught me to give people some grace, man. Everybody not in that place because some people dealing with some things that I done left behind, and that's okay. Just know we all expecting y'all to do y'all homework. Everybody you work with in healthcare who doesn't look like the majority work 10 times harder to be there. And they could tell you stories for weeks about the things that they've been through to get to where they are. I'll never forget, I was at NYU School of Medicine getting my PhD. I love LeBron's shoes. I love LeBron's shoes. They're so comfortable. I also love Beats headphones. And I'm only wearing this suit because I'm speaking at a conference. But as soon as this is over, I'm going to put some basketball shorts on and a t-shirt. Don't worry about it. If you see me out in the hall, I'm going to have basketball shorts on and a t-shirt. And I had that on because I was going into the lab to do research. But I had principal investigators who saw me for my humanity, not for the fact that I was funded by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute or NIH or Ford Foundation. They just saw me as Russell. Russell got flavor, Russell gonna be loud, Russell gonna play gospel music, and then some rap music, and then some classical music, and then some country music, because I love Luke Combs. That's one of my favorite artists of all time. I know. And the security guard asked me, "What are you doing here?" Mind you, I was holding Petri dishes. So if I'm gonna take something, it's not gonna be bacterial cultures. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, that just doesn't seem like something I'm gonna benefit from very much. And it was me and my dog, Philip Thomas, walking in. After the guy realized like it was a really stupid question for him to ask, we were walking and he was like, "Man, he would never ask that question to nobody else but us." And I was like, "Yeah, man, because we in a space that he probably never seen us before. He not used to seeing us in this space." Your colleagues, you're not used to seeing them in that space. If you get to know them, you'll never be like that security guard. They loving, caring, amazing people who care about the CME work just like you. They just so happen to look different than you. Get to know them. Get to know their kids. And the collaborative work that will come from you knowing them better, it's gonna make it better for people like me who are training. I'm gonna do the homework. I don't have another choice. This is my other job when I'm not being a physician scientist. I have no other choice but to read and do all these things if I'm gonna get up on the stage and talk to you all. But for everybody else, we counting on y'all to do it, because we gotta take care of the patient. Okay? So we're gonna open it up for some questions now. Pretty sure we got time for a few questions. Yeah, what's up?
Hey, good morning. Dr. Leddit, thank you so much for speaking this morning and for your insight. And I'm an administrator at a very large health system, and one of my gazillion jobs is I manage grand rounds. And one of the things you just said is, through pretty much 100 grand rounds over the last 2 academic seasons, we've had no black presenters. They've been panelists. So I've just texted my SVP of DEI, who I know for 9 years. She's amazing. And I just said that confidentially, and who's going to call out to our chair as we wrap up in June, or certainly going forward. So thank you. And I was just hoping if you had a minute or two. Ian's a great friend of mine for many years and has been very pivotal in my education and such. So I'd love if you had a few minutes after. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Doctor, thank you for challenging us to ask real questions. My question to you is, how do you make people comfortable enough to give you the answer, not an answer, especially when you're asking questions of people who are tired, who are used to people not listening to them, who are used to being marginalized, because there's a canned answer to all of those questions. And you can't always spend the time talking about video games or getting to know each other well enough. How do you make them feel comfortable enough to give you the real answer?
I love your question. This may not, you'll be like, this ain't got nothing to do with it. So my daughter plays tennis, as Ian talked about. My daughter loves tennis. Both of my kids love tennis, mainly because their dad loves tennis. But my daughter used to be nervous when it would come down to tennis matches. And so one day I asked her, I was like, what's gonna make you feel comfortable? Like, what's gonna put you in your place? And she told me, internally, I was like, this is not what I wanna do. She was asking me to play some music that I don't honestly like. But I did it. And she beat the smoke off this little girl on the tennis court. You gotta do the same thing in a work environment. You gotta ask that straightforward question. Like, what's gonna make you comfortable? Because I'm gonna tell you something. As somebody who's raising 2 young black girls and I'm married to a black woman, generally, bro, minorities shoot it to you straight. It's just hard to believe. Like, if you ask me what made me comfortable, I mean, I want gumbo at our lunch. I want gumbo. I'm just keeping it real. I don't want blue cheese and crackers, bro. I know that's good, and blue cheese and crackers is good every once in a while. But like, don't we have that pretty much every time? I mean, seltzer water is terrible. It tastes nasty. I'm just keeping it real. I know some people who like, I don't know about that one. Most of the people in this room is on my team about that. But that red Fanta hit different. It just do.
Thank you. You know, I'm hearing a bit about respect for your own preferences.
Yeah.
You know, trying to make sure you ask what's going to make that person comfortable to begin with.
Cultural sensitivity, man. It's, what's your name?
My name is Jacob. It's nice to meet you.
Jacob, what's your favorite type of music?
Yeah, too eclectic to really answer that question.
But I'll play it. Funny enough, I was on hematology oncology rotation, and every patient I had, I asked them what was their favorite song. And that's how I would wake them up in the morning. I have Apple Music, so I have access to all the music. I could play their favorite song and wake them up in the morning. Do you know how much that changed the way healthcare happened for them? It was night and day. What kind of food do they like? What kind of music do they like? What do they like the temperature of the room to be like? What kind of pen they like to write with? I'm at that space where people are gonna ask me, like, what kind of pen do you like? You know, what kind of car do you like? If we get you to come speak, like, what kind of car do you want to become in and stuff like that? But on a much smaller scale in the work environment. Actually, it was my senior the other day told me, RJ, you know every kind of music. But I'm taking in everybody's experience. Nobody's less than. Even the homeless person is not less than houseless person.
You speak well about the value of lived experience, and really want to thank you. And I don't want to be the only one asking questions here, but I do want to share something real quick. I've been in an interracial relationship for 12 years, and around the time George Floyd, my girl said, I don't want to drive anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm scared. I think if I get pulled over, I'm going to die. We had a lot of conversations around that time, and I was trying to comfort her at the moment. You're like, baby, I used to get pulled over all the time when I was young. It happens if you drive a flashy car.
Yeah.
I'm telling a story of getting pulled over sometime, and the cop would ask me a question, and he'd just turn his back and start walking away. And she's like, he turned his back on you? And I think she's shocked because that was disrespectful. I said, yeah, I think it was just a power play. And she goes, no, baby, I'm black. No cop has ever turned their back on me. Oh, that's a different way of experiencing that situation.
Yeah.
But it only came out in that moment, and you can't date everybody for, at that point, 10 years, right? So it gets back to that moment of comfort. How do you make people comfortable enough to tell you those degrees of nuance? Because that's where the difference is a lot of the time. You talk about, in medicine, patients not being respected or thought that they're crazy because it is a very well-educated field, so people don't listen when they think they have the answers. And when they have their answers and their experience, when the cops will turn their back on them, they don't ask about that nuance.
Yeah.
And they don't get to understand the real situation a lot of the time. And if there's any lesson we can learn about how to break that barrier down easier, faster, or make people feel comfortable enough to be real in that situation, I don't know that you have the answer. I don't, but I would love to find it.
I will tell you, it takes time. When I first met Brian for the first time, I told him, I said, say, bro, we're going to have to meet a couple times, yeah. So we're not just meeting one time. We're going to meet a couple times. I got to get to know you, man. The first time, Brian was shook, so he couldn't ask me no questions then. It took a couple times. And he was like, RJ, man, I just got questions, bro. I was like, shoot, let's talk. But it took time. Homie, it takes time. It really takes time. People are going to leave this conference. They're going to go back to their environment, wherever you work at, whether it's at an institution, within a healthcare system, a CME space, an association. You're going to want to go talk to all your minority colleagues immediately. Because now you got all the answers. Doctor, they didn't give you the playbook. You're good to go. Nah, don't do that. Don't do that. This is the doctor's orders. Don't do that. Go home to your institution, shut up, and just do some observing. See the way Brenda fixes her coffee. Brenda's a black woman. Maybe she's Nancy. I don't know her name, but she's black. See the way she organizes her office. See what her favorite color is. And when you talk to Brenda or Nancy for the first time, talk to them like you're catching up with a cousin. Brenda, how your kids? Yeah, I know we got this work to do, but we shoot the crap at work all the time. Let's just go ahead and get that out the way. Right? But check in on Brenda or Nancy or Josh or Kwame. Right? Check in on them. And let them know I don't have all the answers, but I'm in a new space where not only do I want to learn from you, but I want to commune with you. I want to kick it with you. Don't say kick it with you. But in your head, don't say, I want to kick it with you. That's not going to work. It's called cultural appropriation. I can say that. But make sure that that's the way that you come at them. But also do your homework. I know we got the Super Bowl to watch next weekend. But you got time to watch 1619. You got time to watch When They See Us. You got time to watch Long Walk to Freedom. You got time to watch Mississippi Burning. And put yourself in the position, not of the people who are providing justice, but of the people who justice is being imposed upon. And ask yourself, what would you have done? And then when you go back and talk to Brenda and Nancy, have that kind of humility. Feel what we feel. When Tyree Nichols died, I haven't watched the film. I haven't watched the video. I can't watch the video. But I know when I get in my car, to my homie's point, every time I get in my car, I think about that. Ain't no cop coming behind me and I'm not grabbing the steering wheel a little bit tighter. There's never a time my kids go outside and I don't feel uncomfortable. I never leave my child at the tennis court by herself. And I never go to the hospital without my scrubs on. And I got 4 different types of doctor behind me. Go let yourself see what that feels like. Let yourself get to that place to where you feel what we feel and then walk in that kind of humility. Not that you know everything, but that you got a lot to learn. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, you could just shout, so this is good.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate everything that you've said. This has been phenomenal. I think, and by the way, my favorite musical artist is George Michael, so we'll get that out of the way. I think probably the challenge for some of us face is, I just actually moved to Germany, which a lot of people look like me.
Can you talk a little bit closer into
Oh, sure. I just moved to Germany, where there's a lot of people that look like me. I grew up in northern Nevada, where at the time, most of the people look like me. So that observation, I think my original question was, how do you get started? And since you sort of already answered my question before I came up, or while I was standing there, is also sort of, how do we get started on observing? Because I think one of the challenges is that a lot of people we should be observing, they are often in places where they're not seen. For example, in the restaurant business, are the El Salvadorians, the Hondurans, the Dominicans, those Hispanic cooks, they're in the back of the house. So you just sort of pass by to get your food out of the window, anybody who's ever worked in restaurants. So how do we make ourselves more aware, and that's a broad question, to observe, right? Like, like who, as opposed to picking out sort of this token individual, Brenda, Nancy, and so on and so forth.
Sure. It's a great question. I tell all my colleagues, y'all need to go to a black church a couple times in your lifetime. You just do. You do. You need to go to the parks. You need to go to the restaurants. You need to go to the churches, mosques. Go to those community centers. Take your kids to those community centers. Let them play basketball, tennis, football, foosball, soccer, all these things. And you interact with the parents. Not so much so that you had the answer, but so that you could learn the way they move, the way they talk to their kids. And not from a judgmental perspective either. People from minority communities parent their kids differently, just like people from majority communities parent their kids differently. We're not subjects to study. This gets back to what I was talking about. It's like getting to know family members that you never really connected with. Don't see them as subjects to study. See them as people that you just so happen to ignore for a long time. You didn't ignore them as subjects and participants. You just ignored the humanity component. So churches is a great place to start, because we turning up in the church. I'm just keeping it real. I was at Glen Arden Baptist on Sunday, and we had us a good old time. Okay? Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you. Thank you.